Hello there. I wanted to do a little follow-up from our last class since some people weren't there, and just to talk about some principles again. So first what I want to do, and this is the painting that I did in class that I want to kind of work on a little bit more and possibly finish and show you adding the next layers. But first, because some people weren't there, I want to show you setting up this drawing. This is just a little warm-up that we did, but I want to do it on the same page. So, I'm holding my pencil really lightly, and when I talk about setting up the pencil really light, you see how light my line is. And let's say that's the vase, and let's say these are going to be the flowers, and I'm just kind of like, I want it to be a little bigger, so let's just make that circle a little bigger. This is a pencil that I actually sharpened with a knife, so it's a nice long lead on it, which is good. And so when I have these shapes here where the vase will be, where the flowers will be, then I can work on kind of doing the shapes a little more particularly, but I'm still doing it super loose. So what I'm noticing in class is people have a really hard line, and what's the problem with a hard line is it's hard to erase. So this is a really light line, and I can erase it really easily. So then I notice from my picture that, for example, one flower is leaning off to this side, and I'm just going to make myself a little line here where the petals will be to remind myself that it's not going all the way around. Let me give myself one here. That one's pretty straight on. I'm looking at this upside down, so it's a little challenging. Here's this one that's facing this way. And obviously the, oopsie. Now I get to show you erasing because this is so light. The fact that these flowers are facing different directions, that's one of the things that makes the scene look very natural. So that's why I want to give myself some lines to remind myself where things are going. Okay, this one is pretty dead on. There's one in here that's a little less dead on. And then one up here that also is doing this. Okay, so that's how we set it up. Now that I've set it up, maybe I want to put some stems in here, just kind of give myself a suggestion of where those stems would be. Maybe that stem should come more like here. But then I can also erase a lot of the line. And I know the camera is bumping right now, so I apologize about that. I can erase some of the lines that are not helpful or no longer part of what I'm doing. And then if I want, I could actually darken some lines. I don't usually bother with this, but if that makes you feel better, you can. But now I'm darkening the right lines, not the white lines, the right lines. And then keep in mind that, if you're going to make that darker, this is kind of, it's not a perfect circle. It's more bubbly, and obviously this is going to go like this, but I'm just going to do that with paint. All right, so let's get rid of my, those are eraser pieces. I don't know what those are called right now. Okay, so let's wet some paints. I generally just wet all of them. And I want to show, especially those of you who were not able to attend, I just want to show you quickly how I was doing my flowers. Okay, so basically I was getting a little puddle of something here. And then let's do another little puddle of a yellow. Should have probably cleaned my palette off, but I was in haste. And then I think I'd like to do an orange, and I'm just going to use this pink right here and make an orange. So I don't really have to clean that off. Okay, and then, so rather than draw each petal, I'm just gonna do this. And I have a pretty small brush. This is like a 3 round. And notice that I am doing my petals in a kind of like a clock formation because I don't want to lose track of where they are. When I did this in class, I did it with a bigger brush. I'll show you that in just a second. Let me get that brush juicy. So, you know, that's it. And that kind of gives me, I think, gives me a lot of the look of sunflowers. Just doing my petals like that and not worrying about, you know, drawing every single petal because I like to be pretty efficient. So let me show you with a bigger brush what I might do. Let's get some more paint. More of this color. Okay, and then I come in here with this. Now for this one, I'm gonna turn my tip this way because this is how my petals would be going. But I'm still turning them. I'm just kind of touching them in. Maybe I'll pick up some of that different color of yellow, try to add a little variety. And then I have that. Now, the center is darker, so I don't need to worry about keeping that line. I'm just gonna paint it in when the paint is dry. And I'm just gonna cover some of the yellow that's going into this. But I like that, that'll, you know, give it some nice symmetry too. Now I do see pencil line, and some of that, you know, I've painted over the pencil line, so I'm gonna see that. But that's okay. Because to me, at this, you know, at this stage for my sketchbook, it was more important that I remind myself where my petals go, because it's very easy to kind of get lost in just going around and around a shape and kind of forget that, you know, you're kind of trying to do a drawing. And then obviously these are running. I really like that. I might even accentuate that a little bit. Sometimes I touch my objects so that they'll run on purpose, because that is what makes watercolor watercolor. And again, the center doesn't matter because I can paint over it. And then maybe, you know, I'm getting like kind of too big of fat petals. So I can just take this little brush again and kind of pull some stuff out. So I get some of that wispiness. You know, and maybe I decide that one's too much. I like that one better. Well, that's okay. Good to know. Now this one, I feel like I want to drop in some more paint while it's still wet because it looks sort of light. So I'm actually just picking it up from down here because this guy has plenty to spare. I was actually going to show you something else, but now I kind of can't stop myself. So just bear with me. Because very quickly I could finish, I'm just pulling some paint off of that. Very quickly I could finish all of these. You know, and sometimes I like to do this and just do it different ways and then see, oh, which one do I like best? Right now I like that one best. But we'll see what happens after I add more layers and stuff. This one just looks a little faint. So maybe I'll just add a little more juice to him. You know, the paint was not as strong, and so I've just lost a little bit. But then this one also has no definition, so I need to do something about that too. But that's okay for a first layer, okay? All right, so now let's turn back to this, and I'll show you what I'm gonna do with this guy to add a little more interest. Now there's lots of different ways to do this. I can use a little brush, and I can add some of the lines between the petals. I'm not gonna encircle the petals, that's too heavy. in my opinion. You can do whatever you would like to do, but that's my take on it. So I'm actually going to take a pen, a brown pen, and what I want to do is just sort of add the perception of some of these petals. Now I know I don't have the photo in front of me, but I know from painting lots of sunflowers that there's actually a little V down here where the petal meets the center. And what I'm also going to kind of think about is where the light is coming from. In this picture, well, actually, it's coming from here. I've given myself a roadmap because I did a cast shadow on this side, which means the light's coming this way, which is good because it does mean that inside here would be darker. Inside here would be darker, but I probably won't do too much of that. You can barely see that. I'm adding some definition, but I don't want to add too much. I actually like how loose it is, but I do want to add some. So I'm just kind of gonna, I'm changing my mind from how that looks, and I'm just gonna add some V's because I know, and you'll see if you zoom in on the picture, there's all these V's around where the petals join. And so even just adding like that kind of detail can really make my picture pop. And these are all the little things that an artist observes so that when we're looking at somebody else's artwork, it's kind of easier to copy because they've already done the observation for us. But if you are doing nature, just look for the patterns of things or a little detail like that, because that detail in and of itself will add reality. And the viewer might not even know why it looks so accurate, but you know, it's because you've captured a detail that all of our eyes see, but not all of us are paying attention to. So I'm just adding a little bit of detail in the middle here. Sometimes add it, oh, actually that is a place where I put wax. If you miss class, next time I see you, get a candle from me, but I can't put ink on that because there's wax there. And sometimes with these little details, it's just easier to do it in pen. I could certainly go and mix up a bunch of brown little paint and, you know, kind of go in and do that. And maybe I would, you know, maybe we'll do some of that now. But sometimes it's just easier to just get a writing implement. But now that I'm doing this, I am kind of into adding a little bit more detail, especially where this would be rounder. I mean, I don't mind some highlight, but I want some highlight, but these are also very dark. But you notice I'm not painting it like a round blob. That isn't actually what it is. If you zoom in on it or look at the real picture that I gave as a reference that some of you were brave enough to paint or draw, I hope you're having success with that. But there's actually a lot going on in these. And there's a lot, you know, this line here, it's not a round line. It's a very dotted and dashed line. And so on top of my brown start that I already dropped different colors into, I'm just kind of dotting and dashing another color. Now in my second layer, I'm not gonna add, I just saw some purple on my palette, but I don't have any purple in this painting. I'm not gonna add a color that's not in my base, because that's when things start looking a little out of symmetry. So if I didn't use it in the first layer, I'm usually not gonna add it later. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions, but so I could also kind of see, the problem is I have to be so careful because these lines are so faint that I really just feel like it's just better to do with a pen. And again, I'm going around in the formation of a clock, because that's how the petals fan around the center. And sometimes my clock is, you know, facing a different direction. That's cool. Now, I will say I don't have a lot of detail here. If my flowers were, if I, like Connie drew and was painting a large flower, if I did that, I would have to have more detail in my petals. But because mine are so far away, this looks like sunflowers. I don't think anybody would look at this and say it wasn't sunflowers. So then it's just, you know, then it's just personal preference, like how much detail do you want? I've become more of a less is more kind of painter. Okay, but I do want to do more in the shadow. So let's spritz this again because it's starting to dry. Sorry, I just bumped you. And so I'm using brown and blue, which makes a nice, I don't remember what blue I used. Let's see, some of this indigo. This makes a nice, I should say, I do use darks. I lied about not adding colors. I do add neutral darks, which I probably, well, I have them in there, but a lot of times I would not use those in my first, especially these two, indigo or neutral tint, because I'm, you know, not using darks. I'm kind of keeping it nice and light. But they're neutral, so that's okay. So I also want to come up here and do a little bit more dark back here, but I'm just going to use, you know, a different color. Now you see, this is not brown. I've tried to let these run together so there's a little symmetry, a little balance, but it is brown. It's not gray. But because it's a darker color, it does lend to a shadow, you know? Okay, so here's a weird one. There would be a shadow under this leaf right here. Now these are the kind of details that I think are really good. You learn a lot about that from still life, how a still life works, and where light goes and where shadow goes. And it's just a very good exercise. You start to get better at it, and you know, you can do it kind of more just making it up. But I think that's good on that. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is possibly doing a background. Let's just do kind of a crazy blue like the artist had in their background. Now, I'm not going to do a full background all the way around this, because partly because I do not enjoy painting all the way around these little objects, but also personally I find it looks a little heavy and I don't really like it. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to kind of put color like this and just see, you know, how that looks. And because my light is coming from over here, I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to actually do a little negative painting. So I have a lot of blue on my brush. I kind of have a point. Okay, so I have a little bit like that. Then what I can do is I can touch it like that. And then with a little water, I can actually kind of move it around. So what I'm getting is a little bit of something happening and that's actually accentuating the petals without, you know, being too crazy. Now this little spot here, this isn't going to work. So I'm going to have to, you know, come down here and do a little bit more, maybe go around this leaf. But, you know, at some point you can just kind of fan it out and that's good enough. Now, should I do something like that over here? I don't think so right now. I think I'll just leave it like that. And, you know, it kind of looks unbalanced as far as a page. So I don't love that part of it, but I like it because it's what I wanted to come to the camera and show you. So, you know, and frankly, I don't know if I want to do it anywhere else. This is kind of where I might just look at this tomorrow or later tonight and see what I think about where it's at. I feel like this blue thing is a little heavy over there. So maybe it would make sense to put some little blue over here, you know, just to balance it out. Or maybe, actually, this is a good idea. Why don't we put some blue down here? We'll just put that same blue and drop it in there so that we kind of start, you know, evening that out. Because sometimes if we have a color that it's like, whoa, that looks really weird, just put it somewhere else. And all of these actually would have shadows under. So that's a good place for some blue. Yeah, so I think that looks much more balanced just because I've put the color in different places. And so, yeah, I frankly wouldn't do much more of a background. Like I said, I just don't enjoy painting around my objects that way. And real watercolorists, they do it differently. They have really good paper. They mask their object. They paint behind it, and then they pull the mask off. So it's kind of just a process that I don't, at this stage, personally enjoy. I would just rather kind of, I don't know, do it like that. Now, I also feel like some of these might make a little shadow over here, and maybe that would be a way to, you know, bring that down a little bit. And maybe even put a little blue in there. Because now I'm kind of committed to this block of color. And so I have to figure out how to add some balance to what's happening. And that might be a bit much. I'm feeling like that's a little much, so what do? I wring my brush out. I'm just wiping it on a towel here that you can't really see off camera. And then I'll come in and just kind of lift that out a little bit. It's okay, it's just a little bit much. I like it better now. So anyway, those are the things I wanted to share with you. The last thing I would like you to do is I would like you to work on a grayscale. And by grayscale, I mean different values, and you need to start with a dark paint, a paint that would achieve a 10, or let's just say we're doing 6. What I've heard is you need 6 values to make a painting really pop and come to life. So what we do is I have that, and then I come and get a little bit more and see if I can make a 5, and then add a little water, and see if I can make a 4. That looks about the same. Let's add a little more water. See, the water is the white. And so every time I add a little water, I'm changing the value. That one's kind of the same. So let me lift it up and see if I can get something different. Yeah. So that exercise of doing that, and then, you know, this can be, let's really wring it out. And then, you know, this could be my 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But that exercise is really helpful. Do that. Try to do that with different darker paints, because that is what will help you, you know, be able to achieve, you know, these darkers these darker, this is really, I'm fiddling now. I'll just let it dry. It will help you put in these darker values if you know how to do the scale. So that is your next homework assignment, in addition to the ones I gave you in class. Thanks so much and have a great night.